Welcome to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast. We're happy you're here. On the podcast, we're certain that you'll relate to the caregiver stories and find comfort with your honorary sisters. Now, before we start, I want to remind you to go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, and sign up for our newsletter. It's full of useful information that you can immediately use. Now, let's learn more about today's guest. Good morning. Good morning. Oh. It's great to see you, Gigi. Good morning. Good morning.
Oh, no. Oh, she's singing. She's singing. Right. Not today.
Right.
Okay.
It's a great day to have a podcast recording.
It is. And we have a fantastic guest today.
Yes. Yes, we do.
You want me to tell you who it is?
You should jump right into it because Jean has a story. Oh, I let it out of the bag.
You let the cat out of the bag already. I can't trust you. I'm going to start starting the podcast.
Just tell them. Just tell everybody.
So today we have Jean Lee with us. And Jean is an author. She's a speaker, and she's the co-founder of AlzAuthors.com. Her memoir, Alzheimer's Daughter, has been named one of the best Alzheimer's books of all time.
That's right.
Jean's story is a story of caregiving, though. It is, as she says, sadness and loss contrast with tenderness and devotion. But it is also a love story, and I love that part about it. What would you do if both parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's on the same day? That is the question that Jean started her caregiving story out when she wrote it to us. Jean, we are so honored to have you here with us. So I guess my first question is, tell us just a little bit about your family. Where are you from? And kind of your life before caregiving. Everybody had a life before caregiving. So tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Oh, thank you. I'm from Ohio, rural Ohio.
The Buckeyes.
Probably about 40 minutes south of Cleveland. And gosh, I was born in the 1950s. My sister was 7 years older than I am, is 7 years older than I am. We were the only two children, no other siblings between us. And we were raised as almost as only children because of that gap in our ages. She had her teenage things and I was still playing with baby dolls, and it just, progressed from there. We were raised by conservative parents, loving parents, wonderful community people, business owners, very small town, a town of population about 700.
Wow.
Everybody knew everybody.
Everybody knew everybody. That is right. Yes. And so my life before caregiving, gosh, I've had two children. That's when my sister and I became close because I had my children a little younger than she did, and our children were about the same ages. So we started to have commonalities then. And even though she lived far away the entire time, she was not a hometown girl. She was very conscious about coming home for things, spending time with the family. And that's when we grew close. She was a middle school principal, and I was a third grade teacher, separated by 1,000 miles. So those were our careers in life.
No kidding. Oh, wait, where does she live?
She lives in Florida now.
Oh, she lives in Florida.
Yes, but she had been located in Washington, D.C. and Missouri.
Oh.
So they had relocated many times, and I had remained the hometown girl teaching in my hometown district.
No kidding. Now, you said that your mom and dad were, were they business owners? Is that what you were saying? What did they do?
In Alzheimer's Daughter, it's a real estate business.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Right. They were in real estate. Isn't that interesting that both you and your sister decided to be educators? I love that. I like that. That's nice.
But, it was, my sister was, I always tease, and this is truly just teasing. She was the perfect one who made the right decisions at the right time, always wanted to be an educator. And I thought, no way, I'm not doing what my sister wanted to do. I'm striking out on my own. And it ended up when I had my own children, I saw them just blossom and grow like sponges, take in everything. And I thought, why have I been denying teaching? So I went back to school. And
Your kids made you do it. We'll
Yes,
say
they
that. They made
did.
you do it. So you stayed in a small town. I love that because I stayed in our small town for quite a while until I moved away. So you're good. How where does your parents are close? I mean, they're right there because they never moved away. So tell me about that relationship as they're getting older. Your kids are growing up. You're moving on in your career and your marriage. Tell me about that.
So I was always very close to my mom and dad, and they helped so much. They helped my husband and I with our children. Our children were very connected to them. And I began to see changes in them at about age 80. And I kept my sister informed. And as I say, she was often home. She came home to spend time in the summer and at Christmas time. And she was seeing these changes too. And we kept conferring about concerns. How long would they be safe in their own home? We had a mindset from the beginning that we wanted to be proactive in their care rather than retroactive. We wanted to avoid a situation where one of them would be injured and have to go somewhere and that they would be separated. They were a very connected couple always and completely through the disease process they were. But so that was our thought process, which did not really mesh with their thought process because of course, they wanted to stay home and their mantra was kind of, we're fine, just go away. So that's where tension came in, some tension. We'd always been a very loving family. We never had fights, so to speak, but there was definitely disagreement and pressures there.
So I love to talk about pre-planning because that's something that we failed at miserably. Yep. We didn't talk about finance.
We don't talk about money. That's rude.
We didn't talk about finance. We didn't talk about what would happen as mom aged, dad aged. It was just like, oh, wow, here's something to do.
They live forever.
Yes, that was our plan. So I'm assuming if there was a little tension when you guys realized that something was going on, it had never really been discussed that there was, okay, we might have to go into assisted living or a nursing home. That was never discussed.
It was never discussed about my sister and I and our parents. However, we watched our parents both put their mothers into care. Their fathers died earlier. So that was always a mindset. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had always said, I will never come to live with my children. So we watched them care for their mothers in that way. And that became the logical train of thought for us, but they were not buying it really.
Okay.
And it's not that they wanted to come to live with me. They didn't. They just wanted to remain on their own. Okay. They would sometimes say, we want to die together.
How long were they married?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say.
They were married 66 years.
There you go. They really liked each other.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
This was back in the time when people liked each other more, I've decided. Think about it. Because they live you didn't have divorce back then, really. I mean, you did, but you're not
really. No, people stayed together.
People stayed together.
And we're either happy or not.
You figured it out.
Yeah. And they got married on a furlough weekend. My dad was in the Army. They had planned to wait and have a wedding, but no, they decided, I'm coming home this weekend. Let's get married. 10 people in attendance, their parents and siblings. My mom did not wear a wedding dress. And she often said, this was a phrase of hers, married is married. It's what you make of it that counts.
I love that. I love that.
So that was the mindset. And just along those lines, as I started to pour my heart and my experience out in the writing of Alzheimer's Daughter, during the darkest time of that caregiving journey, I was cleaning out their house that they had lived in for over 40 years and, trying to purge things out of it. It was, it could be described as a hoarding kind of a situation. And I came across their World War II love letters. And so that's what's on the cover here. And so I'll tell you this story. My sister, I found these letters. I told my sister about them. I showed them to her. We decided they were too private. We could not look at them. We wouldn't want our children reading things that we'd written to our boyfriends before we were married. So, and they were in this Hallmark card box that had this gold foil top. And they stood like little files in a file cabinet. And my dad's dog tags jingled on top of that when I found that box. So my sister and I decided, no, we cannot look at these. So when we finally got them to move, and there were progressive moves for them, we moved that box with them. And get the letters out, feel them, that kind of thing. And when my dad died, my sister and I went to clean out his room of his final few possessions, and we brought them home, stood over the trash can, and dumped that box, the contents of that box, into my trash can in the garage, because we were still committed. These are personal. We were not intended to see these, and they were going to go to the trash, and I hadn't put the lid on yet. And my sister said, "Let's just peek."
That's what sisters do.
Sounds like a true sister. Nobody will know.
Taking them out and reading them, and they were so beautiful. They were written, back and forth to one another during World War II. And it was like a couple would text now, like my dad would say, "I got a haircut today for $1.35, or I won $4.28 in last night's poker game." And they're written on both sides. She'd write on the back and send it back to him, because it was just post-Depression era. Everything was saved and used to its fullest. And these two little pennies on the front, they came out of that box and came out of a letter. They were actually kind of fitted into the paper of the letter. My dad writes, "For 2 cents, I'd come home on my next furlough weekend and we'd get married." And she says, she encloses these pennies. She says, "Is 2 cents all you need? Here you go. I'm sending them to you. Come on, let's get married." So I think their words in this are more beautiful than my own. It tells the story of their passion that kept them together through all.
Okay, well,
that's why I say that it's a love story. It's a caregiving story, Jean, but the book, it's a love story. And so I want you to tell me, I know there was tension. So tell me about time at home, because you said it, they're staying at home, they're taking care of one another. Kind of, that's my quote mark, air quotes there. But tell me about how that decline occurs and what you're seeing, what you're sharing with your sister, what's going on, and why you have to move to that next stage.
So my dad was still going to work, walking to work. He knew the amount of steps, 400 some steps from work. He was, so proud of his work. And my mom was at home alone. She had become fragile. She was falling. She had suffered some broken bones. He had no idea how to manage her, nor did he even think of being concerned about it, because she had always been the caretaker. And he did not know how to fix her a peanut butter sandwich. He didn't know how to get the dishes out of the sink. I would stop every day after work and take care of those tasks. And a neighbor would come in the morning to get her up, because he was just oblivious. He'd be like, "Okay, I'll see you later." And so we felt as though, there was definitely mental decline in him because he was being thought less, which was not at all in his personality. There was mental decline and physical decline in her as well. We tried having a caregiver come in to help us out mornings, get food prepared, that kind of thing. And I'd stop after work, refill meds, clean up the day's dishes, move the laundry, start the laundry. But my mom would have none of it. She was like, and the caregiver was such a beautiful woman and so kind and sweet to my mom. And my mom liked the caregiver very much. But it was like, there is another woman in my house doing my things.
And touching my things.
Yes.
And my husband's things.
For my husband. No, this is not going to work. But the insights from the caregiver were key to me because she saw what was happening when I was not there. And so that helped me tremendously to know the real story, even though I just lived a mile from them. Yeah. And so, I began to visit care communities, which nothing is local in my little rural area. Everything was at least 20, 30 minutes away. And I started visiting, seeing, okay, what do I see that might work here? And my sister was on speed dial. Every day when I stopped, as I backed out of the driveway, I was calling her. And so we were really partners in it together. I give her so much credit because she never questioned me. She never said, oh, that can't really be happening. It was happening. She believed the words that came from my mouth. And when I needed her, for the most part, she was on a plane. And it was such a difficult thing for her to do, but she became the bad cop and let me be the good cop. She let me be the person who was the daily caregiver, who they trusted somewhat. And she would come in and lay down the law. Now, we're going to have to make a move. And that's not the position that a faraway daughter wants to be in. They want to come and have a nice time.
Yeah.
We have divided those roles too, Jean. So I say that it is a good cop. And sadly, it works. Someone has got to be the strong arm. It's kind of like it's a parenting role. It's like, okay, someone is kind of the better parent. Someone is more of a disciplinarian. So I do have a question, and that is, are you still working during this time? I know you've got your daughters.
Oh, yes, during that time. Yes, I was full time.
So how old are your daughters?
So I have two children, a daughter and a son. And
okay.
Fortunately, they had moved on to college life at the time that my parents, we faced a real steep decline with them. So they were not little and in the house. So I was fortunate.
Where are you? What's going on with you? I guess is my question here, because this is a big job. I think for me, it was a mental and emotional task as I watched mom decline. What's going on with you? Because you're trying to work, you're watching your mom and dad. Like, what's going on with you?
And your relationship.
Yeah.
With your husband.
Yes. So my husband had always worked with my dad. And so that was difficult too, because he was often the person who would see the decline. He'd see dad stumble into work or see him try to come to work on a weekend. It was not a weekday. So I got some real insights from my husband too about what was happening with mom and dad. As far as myself, I worked hard. I budgeted my time. I was at school early to get things done efficiently and out of there as early as I could be, because I had to either stop at the house, or once we got them in care, I had to go to the care community to, a few times a week to see what was happening. So I felt as though I really did not have any kind of much of a life with my coworkers, because except for two people who I thought were going through the same thing I was,
Mm-hmm.
I was just in and out of there. There was no time for chit chat, just get it done. And it was teaching third graders is a stressful job because
Yes,
they're
it
8,
is.
9 years old. There are nearly 30 of them in your room running around, and you're trying to meet all their needs and progress all of them forward. And I loved every day of my job. I loved every day with my students. And it kind of befuddles me now because people talk about, what are you doing for self-care? There was zero self-care for me, except for going to work to teach 38 and 9-year-olds. That was my self-care because I had more predictable outcomes with them than I did in my personal life.
I could totally see that. I found for myself, Jean, that the predictability, even though my day, every day in my professional position was different, I knew that was predictable for me, and I felt like I was successful at work. And so when I was not successful. I was out of my comfort zone. I was very uncomfortable with my husband trying to care for him in roles that I had not been asked to do in the past because we had our routine, and that was very uncomfortable for me. And I totally could see, and I absolutely leaned into my work. I even leaned into my work more to try to meet my own personal need, that self-care piece of it. I totally relate to that. Totally relate to that. And who would think that the 8 and 9-year-old, because third graders are no easy show. And I'm going to tell you, Jean, you look like a small woman. I mean, you look like a total third grader. I feel like you're under 5'5". You can tell me.
I kind of am.
So are you under 5'5"?
Yes, I'm 5'3".
Okay. Okay. See. And so like, I don't know that you would have ever been allowed to teach middle school. You just don't meet the height requirements. My friends are teachers, and they're all shorter. And I'm like, you notice the shortness with the elementary school. So I will tell you, and you actually, you guys, you need to see Miss Jean on YouTube, because Jean looks like a teacher. And so, and one that I would be like, I respect that lady. So you're teaching, you're still teaching in the sense of when you're working with and supporting your parents. How long from the time that you started going over, and because I'm assuming it progressed to, I go over every day. This has become my new routine. And it's almost like you don't feel it. Like with our mom, we don't get a sense of it. Like we supported our mom for years. And then we know that time that it changed. There was something that really changed, that we had to step it up. And then now it's God bless JJ. JJ is the primary, because JJ's the favorite. JJ's the favorite. And so I would be your older sister. I am the one who comes in, unless JJ has to lay down the law, which is dicey. And mom takes her really serious. But what was that? How long did you do that? You and your husband do that dance until you moved them? What was now is the time we have to do this?
We started to notice the decline at 80, and at 86, we moved them.
Wow. And so you did a full 6 years.
Yeah. The decline was gradual, as you say. So I would say probably at 83, they were unsafe. Absolutely unsafe. We knew it. And probably for 2 years, I looked at facilities. I had one nailed down, and then we finally got them to agree to go to one, got them on a list, but that list probably took 18 months to actually come about. And during that time, I'd have them both agreeing to go, and then, no, we're not going. And then I'd have to talk it through with them again. And I'd have to talk to dad privately, do this for mom. I'd have to talk to mom privately, do this for dad. And so there were like 7 or 8 times that I talk about in the book that one of them would say, yes, we're going. They'd get the other one to go. And then, no, we're not. And for my sister and I, it felt like we were pushing this boulder up a mountain, getting them to agree. And then all of a sudden, no, we're not going. And that boulder would roll right back down and we'd have to begin again,
Wow. I would think that would be really hard. But so here's the thing. This is what I think most people would say. And until they're in it, you can't be judgy until you're in it, because you would think, oh my gosh, they're 83. And you're saying you and your sister both know they're unsafe, but there's this thing called free will and competency. And so no matter how much you know that this is not a good thing, in the sense of they would be better at a facility. And I'm assuming when you all ultimately did place them, they did go to transition to, and was it assisted living memory care? Was it skilled nursing memory care? Which level? I apologize. I don't remember.
That's fine. If I could back up on that just a little bit. So they had a family doctor that they trusted deeply, and we really leaned into that.
Okay.
My sister knew this man personally and was able to email him behind the scenes that I had started taking them to their appointments. And, she'd email, Gene is going to be bringing mom and dad in. She may not be able to say this in front of them, but this is what's really happening. And so when I would go in with him, he'd already know. And he, it's a tough spot to be in for the family physician too, because my parents were positive people, so he knew he had to approach them positively. He said, I want to give you the best care possibly. So I want you to meet with a team of people who can give you the best care possible. And this is a member of my team. And I want you to meet with this doctor who was a gerontologist. And my mom and dad, they saw right through it. And we had the appointment made. The first appointment with this member of the team, I had taken the day off of work. I got to the house. The drapes are drawn. I'm knocking at the door. They won't open the door. They won't go with me. My mother says, we are not meeting with the committee. We are not going to meet with the committee. And I got my sister on the phone and she talked them through it. She said, Jean has taken the day off of work. Her students are missing her. You are going to get in that car with her and go to this doctor that your family doctor trusts. And so after a series of appointments where they initially didn't want to go, and they were given, some extensive testing, they at times loved these people. They'd hug them. They thought they were playing games. It was so much fun. Oh, you're so nice. And so then, again, after a series of appointments, the doctor brings us in, not the family doctor, but the geriatric doctor brings us in. I know it's for conclusions. And he sits with us. My sister's on speakerphone and he lays it out. You both have Alzheimer's.
So both of them.
Yes. That's how the diagnosis came on the same day, which sounds terrible and devastating, but it was not surprising. My sister and I were almost relieved to have that said. Of course, my mom and dad were highly offended. Like, how could anyone say this about us? Alzheimer's? And I'll tell you, the word was never spoken on our family again until they died. Alzheimer's, never spoken.
What year was that, Jean?
That was and it was 2006.
Okay. All right.
2006.
It's much more prevalent now. It's okay to say it, but I know the years it was never spoken, first of all, and it has gotten progressively easier to mention Alzheimer's to say, but there were many people that wouldn't mention it at all.
And think about, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Think about Louise Thompson. So she was on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about how her parents in their community over in England, it was actually a negative thing. It was seen as if almost like mental health has a stigma. There was a stigma around that. There's something wrong with you, like you did something wrong kind of feel. And I didn't know if there might be a stigma around that for your parents, or if it's just I'm
Yes.
losing control. I'm losing my faculties, and I don't want to accept that. So I'm not going to speak about it. If I don't speak about it, it doesn't exist.
Yes. They were intelligent people, and they thought this was a mark of someone who's challenging our intelligence. But what was key within that visit where that diagnosis was delivered is that the doctor went so far as he wrote 3 prescriptions on his prescription pad, gave them to me, read them out loud. He said, "You will retire from your work in 2 weeks, prescription 1. You will not drive the car, prescription 2. You will bring in help for daily living or move to somewhere where you can have care, prescription 3. So I had these 3 prescriptions in my hand.
Wow.
And as we went forward from that, and mom and dad were like, "No, we're not moving. No, we're not moving." I would say, "Remember these prescriptions." Well, they thought the doctor was a young whippersnapper, but still prescriptions meant something.
That's right.
A doctor wrote this prescription. So I kept referring to that. We have to follow these rules. We have to complete this. And honestly, that's the only way I finally got them to move. And as far as the car, I had to check the mileage on the odometer to make sure they hadn't driven. And, it was a very sad time. But without that doctor's approach, I'm not sure what we would have done. He became the on the bad cop team helping me.
Hey ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day, and the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the U.S. and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing. It's so interesting. I've been working with some friends up north that have a group called Forge Health. And we've talked about, and I've done training with co-facilitated training with them to talk to physicians. We were talking to physicians about hearing caregivers and making them an active part of the treatment team. And in none of our and it may have just not been discussed, but in none of our recordings so far have we talked about the level of engagement a physician has been in and have engaged with you and your sister as caregivers to be a part of the team, and how you worked collaboratively to support and ensure the safety of the patients, otherwise known as your parents, right? I've never heard something so succinctly put out that, like, you are part of the care team. We will work together to support your parents. And everybody was in alignment and everybody understood. And that both the taking the time for your sister to reach out, for them to take the time to there is a level of bedside that isn't allowed and typically in CPT codes. And so this is like that physician that team truly is an example of how we should provide care. And taking the caregiver's comments, especially because this was before you had the diagnosis. So it's almost like you get validation when you get the diagnosis. Like, oh, okay, well, we'll listen to you. But I think I'm so glad that you shared that, because I think as for, each of you who are listening, how are you engaging your medical team as part of your support team? How are you engaging the physicians? How are you becoming a part of that? And if your physicians aren't open to doing that, you have to really think about, is this the right care team for me? Because if they're I don't want to say if they're going against you, but it will make it harder. Nobody wants to swim upstream.
So you get your prescriptions.
I love the
I love that,
prescriptions.
first of all, because I could
I
use
think
those with
I
mom.
still have them. I think I still have them.
I could
In
use
my
those
little
with mom.
spiral bound journal, that I took to every appointment, and I wrote everything in. Yes.
I think I'm going to ask for one of those from our neurologist that says you cannot have hard candy because mom has cracked 2 teeth, Jean. So I'm going to call your doctor. So let me ask you, you get the prescriptions, they've laid it out for you. So then what's your timeline for going to your next facility? Because I know ultimately I believe in a lockdown facility, memory care unit.
Yes.
How do you progress with that? And where, again, when you make those decisions, because those are the decisions that have been hardest for me. I'm guilt ridden. So where
JJ
are
carries the guilt. That was her job.
I carry the guilt with each of those moves that I had to make those decisions. But where are you? Where are they as you progress with those moves?
So we moved them into an independent apartment in a continuing care community.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Masonic. My dad was a Mason. That was the only way we could get him to mesh with this community. He felt like his donations over his lifetime had helped build this place. So yes,
That's good.
if I have to go, I'll go there. And there was an independent apartment available, and we spoke with the staff. We took them the paperwork that showed the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and we questioned them about their levels of care.
Okay.
Would mom and dad be able to stay there? Because we knew they weren't going to be able to handle that independent apartment for very long. And they said, and they were honest about it. They said, yes, they can live their lives here as long as they don't wander. Now, my sister and I are thinking wandering means going outside. There was a lake on a property. It was close to a highway. We thought, they're so connected. They're not going to wander outside. They're going to be fine. They aren't going to wander. So what ended up happening, though, after we moved them from independent to assisted and, decline progressed, we didn't understand that wandering meant within the building.
Mm.
So and the community was lovely, but every hallway looked the same.
Yeah.
Every floor that they got off of the elevator looked the same color tones. So they would go get off the elevator on the wrong floor, go where they thought they were supposed to go, and enter someone else's apartment and say, where are our things? Why are you here? So that then was, they called me in to an unexpected conference, and any teacher knows when you
went to the principal's office, didn't you? You went to the principal's office. Yep.
It's never really good. And so there were 6 people from the facility with me and my sister on speakerphone saying, this is not working. You have to move them. We do not have a memory care part for them. They're wandering. We cannot take care of them anymore. And so that was like, oh my gosh.
How long had they lived there, Jean? I'm going to totally
interrupt.
A year and a half. And so, because I want to kind of go back to the caregiver side of it. Okay. But so you've gone from, especially you've gone from 6 years of going to their home every day. And I talked about this in a training yesterday, to transitioning to a different type of caregiver role. You didn't change. It's not that they went to this place and then you're like, oh, I'm done. I can go back and live my best life. You went to a different type of caregiving. So you just shifted where you went, I'm assuming. So I'm assuming you went there every day.
I would say 3 times a week at least.
Okay. So that provided some relief for you. So
Yes.
Did you get to see your husband a little bit more?
A little. Of course, when you live rural, you are always traveling to get even peanut butter. It's personal time is spent. Rural life is not easy. It's not like you stop at the corner market on your way home from work.
Yeah, we're rural girls too.
Yeah.
We understand that when you go to town,
Yes,
it's going to take
yes.
15 minutes to get to town to go buy something and
Right.
go home or go to school, things like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing close by.
Fortunately, town was where they were living in the care community at that point. So I was able to combine errands with seeing them. But at that point, when they told me they had to leave, I said, well, what if I hired a caregiver to come here to take care of them while they are here in your community? They said, well, let's try it. So I hired a lovely lady who was, I bought all kinds of games. She was going to play cards with them, read the paper to my dad. I just thought, oh, this is the answer. This is going to work. But once again, my mom would have none of it.
Isn't that interesting?
Of it.
Well, I mean, he was probably a catch. I'm not going to lie to you. The love letters are going to be the things that tell you everything. But I'm going to tell you, there's not a lot of older gentlemen compared to the ladies as you get older, the lifespan. So I'm sure I can remember our grandmother. I mean, Jay, you remember, Memo talking about, there was Ben Wilson was one of the only gentlemen in the church. He was quite the catch when Ollie got him. So I'm going to tell you right now, I understand why your mom was a little.
So the lady that came in, how long did she last? And then when did you get called to the principal's office again?
She lasted 1 week.
And I begged her to stay that week. She said, I can't do this.
Okay.
And I begged the community because I needed to get my sister here to help move them.
Gotcha.
And it was Christmas break was approaching. We knew we would have some time there. It was about a week until Christmas break. I said, please, can you just keep them until we can get here to move them? Because it was going to be a delicate move.
Oh, yeah.
To extract them from that community. What have we done wrong? Why do we have to move?
Right.
Why are we behind locked doors?
Yeah. That's going to be really hard, especially with your dad being a former military. I mean, there's a mindset there, and they've had freedom. And I think that's one of the hardest things for our aging folks, or anyone who might have some neurological issues where their capacities are starting to fade. And that's my nice way to put it. And so where it wanes. And so they don't understand, why can't I get out? Why am I, it's like a prison. And I understand memory care. So you move them. I want to be mindful, because I don't want to rush us through, but I want to be mindful of our time. So you move them to the memory care. Was this at a skilled nursing?
No, it was memory care. They were wonderful. Every place my parents stayed was wonderful and tried to take the very best care of them. And they were honest with me about it. I applaud the first place that they lived for being honest enough with me to say, we can't keep your parents safe. You have to move them. And they had wonderful care in the memory care unit and the security unit as well.
Wow.
Is that where ultimately, is that where your mom and dad passed?
Yes.
And so I say this so respectfully because I hate this, who passed first?
My mom passed first. And, it was she was a woman of deep faith, but she was not giving up the fight because she wasn't giving up him.
Wow.
I love that your mom and dad loved each other so much. Like
so agitated. They said they'd never had to give anyone as much sedative as they gave her because she was not leaving him. And he didn't know her. He thought she was his mother. This woman in bed dying cannot be my wife. Is this my mother?
Oh, I don't know, Jean, I don't know how that didn't it breaks my heart, because JJ and I are like, okay, now we're going to get the Kleenex out, because when you have a love like that, and then you are robbed, because that's what Alzheimer's is. You are robbed of things, to not be able to see that. I don't know how that just didn't break your heart, yours and your sister's. I know it did. It did.
It did.
And then how long after did your dad pass?
A year later.
And that's a longer time than I would have expected.
And in the meantime, I mean, this was yet another whole new way of thinking about things. So a week after my mom died, he had no recollection of her. He would say, "Where is that woman I admired?"
Oh,
And
wow.
he started kind of flirting with other women, holding hands, smoochy smoochy, which was like, what?
Yeah.
And the professional staff there, they were again so wonderful with me. And they said, "Jean, this is a mark of his deep love for your mother because he's looking for that closeness again." And so, that pacified me. But that was just in my mind odd and like, I can't believe this is happening until they explained it to me that way.
Well, and yeah, because he's not cheating and he's not moved on. He's just doesn't know. And I think that's the part, because we know he did not. And I can only imagine. Oh my gosh. So I know, oh, Jean, I feel like we need Jean back on, Jay.
I know. So I'll ask my sister a question, but it
Yeah.
goes into, I think, the next step. So Jean, you write this beautiful memoir about the journey, tell me about the healing process of this memoir, about what this led to, because your experience, while it's beautiful, there's so much more to it. And then what AlzAuthors are.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'll say it was not healing at all to write it. It just, and I didn't write it to think that I wrote it for my family. I joined a local writing group to help me write my story well for my family. The writing group said, "This has a larger scope, Jean. You have to publish it." So I so reluctantly, it took me 4 years to get it ready to publish. And I honestly thought, I'm not kidding you. You'll laugh, but this is completely serious. When I pushed that final button to accept publishing it, I thought I was going to be struck by lightning and die.
Why?
Because this was such a personal story.
Yeah.
And I felt as though I was violating my parents by telling my wonderful parents by telling this deeply personal story. So I was eaten up by guilt. I expected reviews to be lashings, like, "How dare you say these things about your parents?" And I didn't. I thought it would grow dust and mold in Amazon's basement. People started reading it. Every review that came in, I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't read it. I can't." And they were lovely. People thanked me for writing it. And reading is what had gotten me through the journey. I'm a teacher. I read to learn. So I had read the works of others, and I still was feeling such guilt. I thought, I've got to reach out to those people to see if they think my book is worthy. So I reached out to Marianne Shuko, who had written Blue Hydrangeas. And I thought, she's going to throw my book in the trash. I sent the book to her. She emailed me back, "Jean, this book is lovely. People can't find these books written from personal experience with Alzheimer's and dementia. Would you help me elevate these books?" I said, "Well, yeah."
Yes.
And then we reached out. She said, "Who else have you read?" And we reached out to Vicky Tapia from Montana, the author of Somebody Stole My Iron. And the three of us began AlzAuthors.com, where we reach out to authors who have written from personal experience and ask if they will write an article for us, and can we put their book in our bookstore, which is an affiliate of Alzheimer, or I'm sorry, is an affiliate of Amazon. You click on the book cover, takes you straight to Amazon to either download it or have it delivered to your door, in a couple of days. And so we started that in late 2015. I published in January of 2015. We started AlzAuthors maybe mid-year, January 15. And now we have over 350 authors writing for us about
Oh, I love that. Okay. So I have one more question and then I'm going to let you go. But, and we'll make sure that, all the links and all the books and all that wonderful stuff is in our show notes for folks to be able to get to, because you definitely want to get with Jean and all the authors.
Because the stories are beautiful.
The stories are brutally
and they're
beautiful.
Authentic and they're honest. So that's my,
love that.
I throw that in.
Jean, this is a completely different question. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is your favorite guilty pleasure? What is the thing that you do just for yourself? Because you said you didn't do any self-care except those little nuggets. And so your third grade nuggets. So what do you do just for you now?
Oh, wow. Well, AlzAuthors kept us busy during the pandemic. That was such a strange time. You sequestered. And without AlzAuthors, and, we could continue that work and grow and blossom.
Right.
Online. That's where I've healed, is AlzAuthors. Post-pandemic, I'm doing some volunteering,
But what is your favorite thing? What is the thing that you love that you do? Some people have said, I love chocolate covered strawberries. I love watching Hallmark is my guilty pleasure. So what's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Potato chips.
That's what I was hoping.
I'm a salty girl.
Oh, look at that. The Buckeyes, it comes true. You're a salty gal.
You are a salty gal.
I love that. You know what? And a resilient at that. Jean, thank you so much for being with us. You have been such a blessing to share your caregiver experience and that of your parents' love story. I think so many nuggets of wisdom in here for people to take away. And I think we can't thank you enough, Jean.
Thank you so much for letting me confess.
Oh, absolutely. Guys, until we confess again, we'll see you next time.
All right.
Well, friends, that's a wrap on this week's confession. Again, thank you so much for listening. But before you go, please take a moment to leave us a review and tell your friends about the Confessions podcast. Don't forget to visit our website to sign up for our newsletter. You'll also find the video recording of all of our episodes on the Confessions website and our YouTube channel. Don't worry, all the details are included in the show notes below. We'll see you next Tuesday when we come together to confess again. Till then, take care of you. Okay, let's talk disclaimers. You may be surprised to find out, but we are not medical professionals and are not providing any medical advice. If you have any medical questions, we recommend that you talk with a medical professional of your choice. As always, my sisters and I at Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver have taken care in selecting the speakers, but the opinions of our speakers are theirs alone. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of the Sisterhood of Care, LLC. Thank you for listening to the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast.